We're going to talk about misinformation, disinformation, propaganda, and why it actually does apply to you even if you think it doesn't. I promise you it does. We're just thrilled to be here. And we're going to talk a little bit about who we are, right?
Yep.
How we got here. The longer we have hosted this show, the more I learn, the less I know. And it's the greatest gift I have gotten. The more smart people I talk to, I realize, wow, a lot of what I thought I knew about America was just stuff I had heard people talking about or maybe read in a book, but it wasn't even true. And I'll talk to people and I'll have all of these myths just totally blown for me, and it's really wonderful. And that's a little bit what we're going to be talking about today.
And the reason we wanted to talk about disinformation, misinformation, and propaganda is you all know it's tomorrow, right? You are all going to be subject to a staggering battery of disinformation, misinformation, and just straight up amygdala hijacking, which I'll talk about later, over the next 11 months.
You all are the prime target for misinformation and disinformation because you all are the prime users of the places where those tend to crop up the most, of social media. So, misinformation and disinformation. What am I talking about when I'm talking about these words, right? Misinformation, I want you to think about this. Mistake, right? Misinformation is like a myth, a rumor. You guys probably know a little bit about rumors, right? So misinformation is false information or misleading information that someone hears and then repeats. The reason it's really important to make the distinction between misinformation and disinformation is that misinformation is often shared as a benign mistake, right? You hear information that you think is really important, you want your friends and your family to know about it, so you share it. And you probably share it without checking to see whether or not it's true, because often you're told this information by someone who seems to know what they're talking about, or a trusted source. And if you haven't checked on it, you could be sharing a lie without knowing it. Disinformation is a purposefully false, misleading statement that someone crafts. It's a lie, right? And there's a lot of that out there. It's usually done by someone who is actively trying to mislead a large portion of the population so that they can get what they want. And when we're talking about things like elections, the stakes there are really high because we're talking about the people who get to be in power, who get to make the laws about how we live our lives in America. So a piece of disinformation that's really common around elections is, you can vote by text, right? Text this number to vote. You text that number, you vote, good, you did your civic duty, you're all done. There's no such thing as text by vote in America. But you might see that all over social media because disinformation campaigns are trying to make sure that people who cannot vote do not get to the polls. They are stripping your voice away. Disinformation is the active choice to stop someone from exercising their rights in America. Can you be comfortable with not being sure whether or not you're seeing or hearing the truth? Can you allow yourself this feeling of, that might not actually be true, I'm just gonna Google it really quick. And that's one of the easiest ways to find out whether or not it is true. This can get a little more high stakes and a little more, real today, right?
Do you want me to read this?
I would love for you.
Yeah, so this was from, Hannah and I saw this last night. It's from Twitter, it was actually on January 20th. Do any of you use Twitter, just out of curiosity? Good, some of you, okay. Oh, X, I should say. This was John IFB, tweeted this on January 20th. Should the Supreme Court block Biden from giving Social Security to illegal immigrants? Yes or no? If yes, I want to follow you. So parlance aside and the language chosen, I wondered, can anyone here spot why this is misinformation?
So you want to say yes, and probably they're not going to be they're not probably going to follow you.
They could be fibbing about the follow you back thing entirely. That's absolutely possibly true. But there's one more thing that is an inaccuracy in this. Did you have something you want to say?
I do want to point out, I really appreciate the point you made. That is a huge way to spread misinformation or disinformation on the internet. Exactly, people want followers, right? They also want to believe that they're part of a community that is reflecting back to them that they are right and they are sharing the truth, and this is good of them. That's a huge part of it, is the social pressure of spreading information and getting positive feedback when you do. So great point.
Let me hear it. Let me hear you.
All right, so basically it comes off from a person who I believe the name was John F.B. or something.
John IFB. Yeah. John K. MAGA is his Twitter account.
Oh yeah, so if his real handle is John F. MAGA, then it obviously comes from a certain political belief, so it's not very like a bipartisan sort of organization that basically goes like a rabbit hole. I know sometimes that when you go on, like say, perhaps say like NPR or PBS, or like these small little what is it, like polls, but this is from a political belief account, so it's not really like an accurate representation.
Excellent point about, and we're actually going to talk more about that at the end, about checking your sources. Well done. Well done. Propaganda. Propaganda is different. Propaganda is a non-consensual form of persuasion. It is forcing you, it's like a magic trick. It is forcing you to think or believe something without your consent. So quick ways to guard against misinformation and disinformation. I'm going to just talk about amygdala hijacking, and then I'm going to turn it back to you. Is to watch out for what I refer to as amygdala hijack. Do any of you know what the amygdala is? Yeah.
Isn't it the part of the brain that generates fear?
Well done. So amygdala hijacking is a technique, and you heard it in that attack ad. If you have kind of steady music that is eerie and slightly off-key and makes you feel like something dangerous is about to happen. We are conditioned when we watch movies to know when something bad is going to happen. It's not just Hollywood that does it. Every news station does it to get more people to vote.
It's basically in a horror movie where you're like, no, oh boy, something bad's gonna happen. The news does that all the time. We're just less conditioned to realize it because we're not watching a horror movie to our knowledge.
Yeah, and it's addictive. Like, we crave that feeling. How many of you play like horror, scary video games from time to time? Yeah, I sure do. You sure do. So we crave that feeling of, oh gosh, something could happen anytime. So if you find people who are watching news all the time that's constantly thumping and screeching and police sirens and gunshots and scary music, know that it's an addiction. Know that if you want to, you can just turn it off.
I would say what you can also do is the journalistic fact check, right? You can be your own fact checker. A lot of fact checkers at journalism institutions, at media outlets, are simply going through an article or listening to a podcast and pulling up about 15 tabs. You know, they've got various PDFs of journal articles, peer-reviewed journal articles. They've got various websites that they trust, that they know have been vetted, and they are checking all of those facts, just pulling up the tabs all along the way. This is called lateral fact checking, and it's the most effective, quickest way to make sure that the thing that you're consuming is actually true.
You all use Google, right? Of course, I do too. I recently did something that's changed my media consumption. I don't work for the company or anything. So Google, much like YouTube, much like Twitter, much like Instagram, Google tracks what you search for. And if you search for something, it knows you searched for that. If you like something on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, if you subscribe, that is like a pack of hounds on the internet being loosed against you. Liking something exponentially increases the data that is sent to that company to feed that algorithm to send you more of the same thing. I recently switched my search provider to something called DuckDuckGo. It sounds ridiculous. I don't give them money or anything. I just started doing it, and my life has changed from it because it doesn't track your searches, and it doesn't give you ads, and it doesn't feed you what it wants to feed you, what you want to be fed. So if you want to do a bare minimum, try having always a browser window open with DuckDuckGo instead of Google. And if you want to do the big thing, stop liking things and subscribing to things.
Nick said this earlier, and I was like, it's not
You're
gonna work.
never going to listen. Stop liking things. But it really matters. Also, which is a bare minimum. If you have a link you want to send somebody, don't click the share button. Just copy the link and text it to your friend instead. Makes a world of difference and eliminates a huge amount of the trackers that are put on to feed the algorithm. Just stuff that we found researching this a couple weeks ago.
And always listen to that little voice in your head that says, wait, really? I mean, that's interesting, but like, really? think that I know enough about the world. I go to this wonderful school. I'm educated every single day. The thing I just heard seems a little off. It doesn't quite smell right. That's usually a really good sign. Your instinct, your lifetime of learning is kicking in there and telling you to dig a little bit deeper before you believe, share, or like information.
And this is called allsides.com. I encourage you to visit it just for fun, with a grain of salt. Any website that ends in .com, you have to have a grain of salt because it's a company. Allsides.com takes an amalgamation of the headlines from the left, from the center, and from the right, and you see all three at the same time. You can see, for example, Biden says massive changes needed at the southern border. Is the southern border secure? No, it's not, President Biden says. That was from the left. On the right, Biden finally admits border isn't secure, believes massive changes needed. I'm ready to act. A massive difference in those two headlines. If you wake up in the morning, you go to All Sides and you see how is the media covering all these different stories, you're going to definitely be less likely to fall victim to it.